Okay. So in this module coming up, module 4, you're doing your first draft of your short story. 1,500 is the minimum word count. 2,500 is the maximum word count. As Gina can attest, I'm hard over on those 2,500 words. And the reason for it is that limiting yourself to the 2,500 words will make you write better if you have to polish down to make that limit. Gina, can you back me up on that?
Oh my God, I'm telling you, that is such an amazing lesson, because you don't realize if you get to like 2,600 words, all the little words you could take, the ats, this is, that, when, a lot of adverbs, adjectives, it really, in sister class, I've taken an editing class also. So it almost gets to be kind of a game where you can kind of take out the words, but you really do find at the end, you still have the main concept of the story without a lot of the fluff. And I'm, even to this day, when I write emails at work, I take out so many extraneous words that I do not need, and my coworkers love me because it's like, it's less verbose. So yes, it's challenging, but it's definitely worth doing because it will affect a lot of areas besides just writing the story in the class.
So thank you for the testimony. And one of the things you'll hear me saying in the feedback, and I give oral feedback for all the milestones. So if that doesn't work for you, let me know and I will give you written feedback. In the oral feedback I'm doing so far, what you're going to be hearing is me saying, do you know what your sort of theoretical framework for this is? And you're like, no, it's just kind of like the big theme. Like, what are you writing about? And when you understand what your story is about, like with a capital A, then every paragraph, every sentence, every good word choice will serve the purpose of the story. And that will be the place where you'll be able to cut it down if you need to. But also, if you're having trouble reaching your 1,500 words to start with, a great place to be adding is with sensory details and with rhetorical devices, especially figurative language, especially metaphor and simile. And your sensory details and your metaphor and simile often will work together. So the senses we write about the most are sight and sound. That's just instinctive as humans. We want to remember to really push taste, touch, and smell. And in those, typically you're going to say it tasted like, or it smelled like, it felt like, right? And in those cases, whatever you're saying that it's like is a way of translating for the reader what your character is going through. And you're finding common ground with your reader to say, the sweatshirt felt like her childhood teddy bear. And what you know is that this is an example I use all the time. So if it's in your recording, just work with me. But childhood teddy bear is imbued with a lot of meaning. You know, it has like that feeling of comfort, of a time when you had no responsibilities, you know, all of those things. So when you're choosing what you're using for figurative language, you're also making choices about how you want your reader to understand the moment that your character is having. Now, so in the writing for module 4, the course designers tell you must use dialogue. I do recommend it. Your character will always be more interesting in connection with another character. You never want to leave your character alone too long. And I am constantly guilty of this. So when your character is inside their head, they're typically not as interesting as they are when they're engaging with somebody else. So if I had to guess why the course designers made this course this way by saying in module 4, you have to use dialogue, I think it's because they're trying to force you to put your character into connection with somebody else. They don't give me any place to grade whether you use dialogue or not. So just tuck that in your hip pocket for however you want to use that. But the reason for it, I think, matters. So I recommend you try to have dialogue because, again, your character, because we're writers, we love to be inside of our heads. And so we love to leave our characters inside of their heads. And it's just better, no matter how much it feels good to you, it's just better for your reader to have them in conversation or juxtaposition or some way interacting with a world that happens outside of their head. Does that make sense? Do y'all have any questions with that? So that's my big advice for the week. And I thought we would try to do this improv writing prompt that I briefly talked about before I realized I wasn't recording again. I need to change the timer on this. Okay. So what happens with an improv writing prompt is that I will get you started writing. And for those of you who weren't able to make it last time, a big reminder is if you start, so I want you to keep in mind, it's a good idea to maybe pick the story that you're hoping to work with for your first draft or, you know, whatever you're working on. But also it could just be autobiographical. The most important thing is that you're writing during this session. And if you find that you have like a block, just write over and over again. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And your brain will get irritated and you will figure out something to write. It works every time. Ideally, you would do handwriting because that engages both hemispheres of your brain, but you don't have to. I do most of my composition on the keyboard, but I'll usually start a new project by hand because that gets the creative juices flowing at the beginning of it. Your choice, it's not a requirement. Nothing matters except writing, even if you don't follow the prompt. Like if your imagination takes you away from these words I'm about to throw at you, write what you're writing. The whole point is write, right? It's like RIGHT. Okay. So what'll happen is what I do is I just flip to a page. Like if we were doing it right now, I would stick my finger down and it would be perfume, would be the word that I would throw at you. So I'll say on your marks, get set, write, and you will start off with a sentence of where you think you're going. So have in mind like a character you want to start with, or, you know, either have them do an action, ask a question, or make an observation. So have something like that happen for your first sentence. Like, if only Anna had known, boom, right? And start writing. But then I'm going to be like, perfume. And you have to try to fit perfume into whatever you're writing. And it's going to take you in crazy directions, but it's so great because pieces of your story will emerge that probably you're not expecting. So it's really a lot of fun. And this is a great recording to come back to, even though you know the words that are coming, because, you know, if you start off on some other thing, you'll end up writing something that you're not expecting. It's just so much fun. And my friend Kelly Tanner-Backenroth taught me this writing prompt. I always want to give her credit because she's an incredible writer. And I think, Dina, didn't she come and do this one for you?
I can't remember. I can't remember.
Maybe not. Maybe it was the class after you. Okay, so is everybody ready to begin writing? Whew. Okay, ready. On your marks. Oh, get set, write. Sadly. Polished. And I'll be throwing these words in the chat in case you miss them. Lovesick. Love sick.
Oh, okay.
Sleeping. Errant. ERRANT, errant. Brave. Recognize. Sinister. Hummel. Codger. Like an old codger. The last one I'll give you is fragile. And then you have about a minute to write things out.
That's crazy.
All right, about 10 more seconds to wrap things up. All right, time is up, please. Is that a little bit crazy?
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to pivot to the new word, but it's super fun to see what happens. Probably should have warned you about that. All right, I can see Kai is emerging. I know Gina was already laughing, so I know she's close. Jonathan, how did it go? Are you pretty much there?
Yes, I'm finished.
Good, good, thank you. Lauren, you good? Okay. So, how did it go? What was the experience like for you?
Kind of a mess.
Good. So right on track then. What about the rest of you?
That
Crazy.
was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I would say it was definitely chaotic.
Mm.
Good. That's kind of what I wanted to have happen because we often write in a very calm space, right? And so having somebody throw words at you that you did not intend to have in your writing shakes you up and gives you a chance to see what happens when you open up your creativity. And undoubtedly, it shuts down your inner editor. And that's just an important thing to have happen sometimes. That also is part of that compressed writing 6 minutes helps shut down your inner editor. But when somebody's throwing words at you, you're not even making your own choices, right? And it just reminds us that sometimes we limit ourselves before the words even get on the page. And we don't want to do that. We really want to make it, you know, creative and spontaneous and beyond what even we ourselves are able to do. Does anybody want to read what you got?
I'll read.
Go ahead.
Okay, Jonathan.
Oh, by the way, I completely blanked on errant. I forgot what it meant because I was writing so fast. So
Yeah, and that's totally fine.
that sentence doesn't make sense.
Okay, I was gonna say, because if you don't use every word, that's fine too. Writing is what matters. Okay, let's hear what you got.
Sadly, she watched her grandfather polish his trophies, the lovesick fool. He'd been sleeping one day and she was just gone. The errant nature of it all. He'd likely take that misery with him to the grave. She wondered how he couldn't recognize that he had been used. It was a sinister plot by her mother and her husband since the marriage. But he couldn't face that, and his heart had been pummeled by it. She pitied the old codger, but what can be done about a man's broken heart and a fragile ego?
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good.
Thank
That
you.
was fantastic. And Aaron, I think, really worked in that context, like just slightly poetic, forcing your reader to be like, oh, what does he mean by errant? And actually having that little bit of mystery allows your reader to form meaning that, you know, maybe even you don't fully have, right? What do you all think of what worked out for Jonathan?
So I thought that it was really like poetic, but in a way that you didn't lose the thread of the story either. I think it was a really nice balance between poetry and prose.
Poetic prose, yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I
I liked
agree.
at the end when you had, I'm sorry, we keep talking to each other. I like the fragile ego at the end and the sinister and I forgot exactly how you used the word codger, but that flowed very nicely. And then at the end, when you're talking about the fragile ego. So it was nice how you kind of were able to connect them and make them flow.
Thank you.
I liked how it started where the character is polishing a trophy, right? So that's like something that should have a positive connotation, and then it goes to a dark place that you wouldn't expect. So that was really cool.
Yeah, almost a glory days feeling to it, that they felt sorry for the grandfather because all this still mattered to him seemed to be whatever he won the trophy for. Was that the feeling you all had?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellently done, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Who wants to go next? Kai's hand is up. Okay.
All right. And I got some of the words, but not all of them.
That's fine. Writing is all that
okay.
matters.
Maisie sat back in the uncomfortable office chair, staring down sadly at the polished dress shoes in the bag by her feet. An errant lock of hair fell forward into her face, jostling the headset that now seemed glued to her face. She needed sleep. She should be sleeping right now. But the lines were still ringing off the hooks. There was still work to be done, and she didn't want to be asleep when everything ended. Not really. She laughed bitterly, remembering the old codger 3 calls ago that called her brave. She felt anything but. Only a fragile sort of stubbornness kept her going. She sighed and picked up the phone again. 911, what's your... She stopped mid-sentence. She recognized that voice.
Wow.
Nice.
Thank you.
But how
Fragile
is she-
stubbornness. I'm sorry, fragile stubbornness. Is that what you said? I loved that.
Mhm. Thank you.
That's great. That's good. It kind of makes you think. It's like so polar, but it's yeah, very. I like that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I
Anyone
really
else?
like the twist where she recognized the voice. That was like a really good setup for a big twist like that.
Thank you.
Any thoughts, Jonathan?
Yeah, my focus was on the repetition of sleep when you said it twice, because I know that feeling and it made me a little sleepy.
Well,
That's-
sorry, but thank you.
I think, yeah, feeling sleepy is probably a theme. I wrote down fragile stubbornness too. I felt like the 2 words are nicely juxtaposed because stubbornness is usually something hard and tough. And she seemed to just be developing it. So I really liked that. And I got thrown right at the end because I just got done with a certain person's work. And I was like, wait, how is she alive? But maybe this is earlier.
Yeah.
So there's a 911 scene in one of her ideas for these coming up stories. So
Hmm.
Actually, that one's mine.
no, I know, that's what I'm saying. How is your
Oh,
person
okay.
alive? Because well, she's probably got like
okay.
21 hours left now, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So good. That was really interesting. I thought the dress shoes were a really nice detail. And I thought at first that Maisie was somebody younger because of the dress shoes. I was picturing like Mary Jane's. And then I
Mhm.
realized she's at work, which is really neat, So I understand, like, I'm in a pair of Crocs right now. So if I was at formal work, I'd actually have to have real shoes on, right? And
Mhm.
that helped set the setting without saying, here she is at work, So nicely done using a detail that would carry more weight with it than just the fact that she has nice shoes on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Great.
All right. The wind seeps into your. I'm having trouble reading my handwriting here. All right. The wind seeps into your psyche. It drenches all your fears it drenches all your thoughts until you polish every insecurity into a high sheen. It makes you, it makes you lovesick for the high school crush you hadn't thought about in years. You walk through the day as if you're dreaming, an errant guest to reality. You have to be brave to face the Santa Ana winds. You're quite the windbag yourself, Susie comments. She recognizes the egomaniac when she sees one. Cameron is nothing more than a womanizer who prides himself for being a sinister lady killer. He'll pummel her with conversation if she sticks around. He's got old single codger written all over him. He is the one who should be anxious. Susie knows that she'll escape, but Cameron is a lifer.
Nice. Okay, so what do y'all think? What stood out to you?
So I really liked the characterization and how you did the relationships there. Everybody had a very clear image of both like who they were presenting as and what they felt inside, and I really like that.
You.
I like that you mentioned windbag and then the Santa Ana winds. I believe that's what you, and I liked
Yeah.
that, just the repetitive of the word winds. I don't know, that's what stood out to me, just the windbag. And then I think of the strong Santa Ana winds, how they're pretty intense. So a windbag is just something keep going and talking and talking. So that's what touched me a little bit.
Thank you.
Mhm.
My favorite was when you described someone pummeling her with conversation, because I know someone like that. I used to go to work at 6 a.m. There was someone who was very cheerful, and it's too early for you to be this cheerful.
That's the worst case scenario.
Especially at 6 a.m. That
Right?
is too early for that.
I love that idea, Jonathan. All of you should be stealing Devin's pummel with conversation, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
what a great characterization. That's what I feel
Mhm.
like I do in these Zoom calls with you, because I'm talking all the time. Yeah, and in the military, boy, we had all these different times, where you show up for work at like, a shift and an exercise at 3 a.m, and somebody's like, "Hello," and you're like, "No, this isn't happening." It seemed as if, and I wasn't picking up on it because I was taking notes, but it seemed as if you wrote this in the second person, or somebody was speaking to her. Was it dialogue or second person?
I guess it was second person, but then I guess the story I'm writing is like in the third person omniscient, where it's like kind of like an unknown narrator that knows everything.
Oh, right,
So
omniscient.
they jump
narrator.
in with the dialogue.
Yeah, that's great. So like, because second person is pretty hard to pull off, but it happens. I keep forgetting the name of the book because that tells you how I feel about the second person point of view, but there's a whole short novel I've recently read that is written in the second person point of view, and I'll try to find the name and share it with
Oh,
y'all.
well, I guess it was written in the first person because it's like kind of like this long monologue that the guy's doing, and then that's like when the other character cuts him off because she's getting pummeled by just like this endless wall of words. So it kind of feels like second person, but it's a guy just talking.
Yeah, so if that's dialogue, then he's speaking to the you, which is really nice, so that allows me to say, though, second person as a point of view is hard to pull off. In dialogue, he's speaking to her as you. That works really great. And especially because it really does feel like a pummeled conversation on her. And then one thing I wanted to add, just because you made me think of this, just trying to find my teaching moments. Omniscient narration is also a little bit hard. And all I would say about that is that be careful when you choose an omniscient narrator that you don't do head hopping, which means that we have the interior view too frequently in different characters. So like you might have the interior view of two characters in the same paragraph or something, and it just is very whiplashy for your reader. So that's something to pay attention to. I think that George Saunders' puppy, I got a little whiplash on that, and he's an expert. I had it like he switches to, I think it's Callie, or I can't remember the second character's name. It's Marie, and then all of a sudden you've got this disabled child chained to a tree in the backyard, and you're like, wait, what?
Right.
And I think he meant that. And like he's George Saunders, he can get away with whatever he wants. But this class is definitely a fundamentals class, which is why the course designers require you to stick to one point of view, so that you're because I'm not ready to write multiple point of views or like a short story. I mean, I think it's really easy to do at the novel level where you maybe change chapters each time you change a point of view. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, I have a client who does that.
Yeah, and that works well, I think, as long as they're very clear and you don't have too many points of view. But I'm thinking of like Leanne Moriarty, and just Meg Wolitzer, like some of these really popular authors, they do that really frequently. Like they have viewpoint changes with chapters, and it works out because you get all these kind of different perspectives that help build on the mystery that they're working on. Like Leanne Moriarty wrote Big Little Lies, and you're trying to reveal how that moment it starts with happened. Whew, okay, Gina, you're our only one left. What'd you get?
Okay. First of all, let me just say, George Saunders' puppy, that traumatized me when I read that. That's like right up there with, oh my God. was it Flannery O'Connor, Everyday Country People? Oh my God. There's just certain stories that stay with you that I'm like, oh. So yeah, that was one of them. Thanks.
Yeah,
It's good. It's powerful.
For me, it would have to be A Rose for Emily in that sort of vein.
Yeah, just like, oh.
Figure out what's happening at the end of A Rose for Emily. You're like, wait, hold on.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. All right. Why does thoughts of spaghetti and meatballs sadly cross my brain? They always made me happy. I remember they were cooking while I had polished the dining room table on Saturday mornings. I was lovesick for those meatballs. Grandma started cooking early in the mornings while I was still sleeping. What an errant way of dusting the furniture. I just knew it had to be done before I went to my grave, which was hopefully a long time away since from my 7-year-old self. I did recognize the succulent scent of garlic and olive oil upon my rising that morning. Cooking them slowly in sauce, there was never anything sinister about the process. Sometimes grandma would let me pummel the dough that would later become the homemade raviolis and pasta. She was 76 years old, but nothing close to an old codger. She was beautiful and funny, a robust, determined immigrant from Italy. There was nothing fragile in her spirit. She taught me to be strong as well as be a master of making spaghetti and meatballs.
That had nice shape. What do y'all think?
I thought that it was absolutely adorable. And I also loved the I have to do this before I die from a 7-year-old, because that was absolutely me.
Thank you.
It was just a really nice detail.
Thank you. Yeah, she said grave. I'm like, how am I going to fit grave in this? Oh my God. So yeah.
But isn't it fun how an unexpected word really, because what 7-year-old who's been sent off to dust doesn't want to die in that moment, right? I mean, it makes sense, I think, thematically. What else, everybody?
Yeah, I think you really captured the angst that comes with housework really well. And it could have gone into like a really bitter monologue, but then it kind of comes back to the grandmother and like the sense of a loving home that kind of brings it all back about, you know, why we all do these things.
Yeah. Thanks.
I like that you said the grandmother was 70 something years old, but she still didn't look old, because
Yeah.
that reminds me of some old people I know who have too much energy for their age, and some young people who look very old because of how stressed they are.
Thank
Of course, you
you.
picked my mother's exact age, and that made me, like pause, because, I think, I don't know about the rest of you, but we feel younger than we are. So
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I do.
So then my mother is like 76, and I'm like, but she is a little bit fragile, but she's sick. I loved the line "lovesick for meatballs." Really stood out for me in the best ways, because we all have, and that would be a wonderful place in a story to bring in that figurative language about what they smell like, and maybe they smell like Sundays at Grandma. I mean, I don't know, but it's that smell, I think, that makes people lovesick, because there's all this science behind the way that smell is associated with memory. So it works for me because I know that it's associated with each other.
Thank you. It's amazing with those. It's amazing. Just some feedback. It's amazing with the improv writing, how quickly your brain, it's like, you just got to go. It's like, you just got to go. And it's amazing how our brains are so adept. Like, we can just keep moving, and you don't realize what a beautiful gift that is, just to be able to have that, ability.
Yeah. Excellent point. And I guess the part that I really hope you take away from it, that is just exactly what Gina is saying, is that sometimes we put our brains on a rail, like, we're going to write this right now. And what if your brain offers you something, curving instead of a straight railroad track, parallel lines? What if you get offered, a starburst explosion? Take it, run with it, because you can always delete, you can always put it in a different file. I mean, but you might be given an amazing gift, you know, like what was the fun, like Heart Pummeled with Jonathan, and Lovesick for Meatballs, Fragile Stubbornness, and the Pummeled with Conversation. So Pummeled did two good things, right? So just, you know, I want to encourage you not to limit yourself and miss out on the chance for these gifts that you weren't expecting, right? Okay, so for the next writing prompt, two things. I want you to dig around right now in what you wrote and pick like a favorite sentence or sentence you think might take you in another direction. So go ahead and pick that, and then I will look at the writing prompts to get this right. Come on. And then I will put it in the chat and we will start to write. But it's fighting with me.
So we're taking one sentence from what we just previously wrote, and then we're gonna move it into what you're gonna give us now.
Yeah. So I want
Okay.
you to start with that sentence. Like go ahead and get that down for wherever you're going to write.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'm going to give you two possibilities to write from for the prompt. You can use one of them, you can combine them. I just don't want to limit you because you're picking a very limiting sentence at this moment. And so when I see that you've got your sentence written down, I will start. Okay, and the way that this prompt is written, the first one uses the first person, but whatever person your sentence is in, use that. So like the first prompt you could write with says, and this will show up in the chat, says, start writing with, I brought you here because, after that sentence that you've written down. But it could be, he brought us here because, or whatever, like however you need to shift that viewpoint, you can. But the other prompt you could start with is to think about, what do your characters want to avoid doing at all costs? And then write about how they become perilously close to doing, or maybe they do it, that very thing that they don't want to do, right? So like, you know, a very tame one would be, Gina's grandmother doesn't want to burn her meatballs, right? But she comes close to doing it. But take it way more extreme than that, right? If you choose that one, or you can combine them together. You know, they get brought somewhere and they become perilously close to revealing their deepest, darkest secret, or whatever it is. So those are in the chat, and you have your sentence to begin with your work. So we're tying it into what you were already writing. Here's the prompts that you can work from. On your marks, get set, write. You have about a minute left. Okay, do your best to start wrapping things up, please. Okay, I can see you're getting close. So did that feel interminably longer than last time?
Mm.
It was the exact same amount of time, but without the urgency of those words being thrown at you, it's really different. And it would add, as you're wrapping things up, it is entirely possible for you to make a couple of different recordings over a period of time, like 5 or 6 minutes, where you, every say 30 seconds, throw yourself a word. And if you make like 5 or 6 of these recordings, you won't remember the words when you go back to write as easily. And you can do the same, you can create the same effect for yourself just by grabbing a book that you like or don't like and finding interesting words and throwing them out there. And then, wait a week and use them and you'll be surprised what'll happen. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I did a similar thing in undergrad, not quite the same, but one of the most interesting exercises I did was we had to create either a story or blackout poetry strictly from words on one page of a book in the Twilight Saga.
Well, there you go. And you you could only use those words and rearrange them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh.
One of the most difficult exercises I've ever done, but it was very useful.
Were you required to use every word?
Sorry, what?
Were you required to use every word, or you could just only use words? And could you repeat words once you used them?
Yeah, you could repeat words. But you had to use like, you couldn't bring anything outside of the page.
Right. Okay. Well, that would be flash fiction because it would be super hard. Yeah. Great. Well, so the last time I did this improv prompt, I did not do the step that Kelly normally does where I tie your next writing to it. So I'm interested to hear how that went. And then I want to know also, like, were you being visited by the ghosts of improv words, or did it head off in a new direction?
Mine headed off. Go ahead.
Mine just kind of went off out of nowhere. Like I was just writing. It was kind of like stream of consciousness by the end.
Good. I can't wait to hear it. What were you gonna say, Gina?
Yeah, I didn't go back to the improv words at all. I just kind of took the sentence and ran with it, but it's still the same. It's still the same gist, but I didn't. Yeah, I guess I did stay in that realm. Never mind.
Yeah, for me, I went off on a completely different story with different characters, but I kept fragile because that was within the sentence, but that was about it as far as similarities.
Fair enough. What about you, Lauren?
Oh, I made a reference to the sentence I selected, but I didn't actually reincorporate it. It was kind of too much of a word salad to,
Yeah.
It was kind of tough to fit in, so.
Okay, that's good for me to know, just because I might not do it again next time, because I think starting fresh can work too. Who wants to read?
I'll go first again.
Okay.
He'd likely take that misery with him to the grave, because it was easier to be angry at her. It was easier than to think it was a plot, by her and her husband. It was easier to admit that he'd been at fault as well. No one was wrong, but no one had been right. He'd go to his grave carrying that anger and misery because that was easier than admitting that she'd used him and had done what was best for him. She'd never admit that either. When it came to their stubbornness, they were truly parent and child. The granddaughter made a note as she watched the whole sad affair. Love was a vice and a virtue.
That was good.
So I absolutely loved the vice and a virtue because of how like that sort of wordplay, like vice as in like the traditional thought of vice and virtue, but also that it just squeezes so tightly as well. I really loved that.
Yeah, I like the vice and the virtue also. That's what stuck out to me.
Yeah, I agree. But then I also like the way you talk about how it can become a habit to hold a grudge, where it's just kind of easy to hold on to those negative emotions, and it takes a lot more courage to kind of let them go. So I like that.
And I really appreciated the repetition that helped kind of drive that in for us, and the explanation that it was easier to hold that grudge than to admit what had kind of really happened. And then the twist I did not expect, and that's what was so nice about the ending of it, was to show us that the grandchild had been impacted by all of it, by watching it and learning this thing that we don't always it's more rare to hear that love can be a vice, right? But then you give us that nice, as Kai said, tight grouping that squeezes it. Oh, my dogs are going to start barking in just a second. But so life can be a vice and a virtue. Okay, so I'm going to ask somebody, well, shoot, can we just pause for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, shoot. Well, so far they don't realize she's here. So we'll try to, is somebody willing to read? And if chaos erupts, we'll pause and then we'll restart. I don't normally have the dogs in here with me, but it's been so quiet.
Mhm.
Okay, so
I'll read.
yeah, and if you see me waving my arms, I'm just trying to get my neighbor to go away.
Okay, no worries. Is that good?
Yeah,
Good?
I'm going to mute just in case they start.
Okay, so I'm good to read?
Mhm.
Okay. I brought you here because she was a beautiful and funny, robust, determined immigrant from Italy. I want to celebrate her life with Italian music, food, stories from her birthplace in Basilicata, Italy, mostly the food. How do I express the love she conveyed through her 60 years of cooking for not only her husband, 9 children, and 28 grandchildren? It was all done with her hands. Flour, yeast, eggs, tomatoes, beef, and seasonings and cheese, lots and lots of cheese. Her joy was just that. She showed her love through her cooking. The worst insult, if anyone of the previously mentioned generations did not eat what she lovingly prepared, this was a fate to be avoided at all costs. It was a personal insult if food so painstakingly prepared was not eaten. It simply wasn't done. A lesson learned from her mother growing up in southern Italy in an economically depressed region. In the case of the great grandmother, they ate because they didn't know when they would eat next. Grandma's thought process was a little of both. You love me if you eat it, and never waste food, and be thankful for what you have.
We did it.
Yay.
So what stood out for you all in Gina's piece?
I like the opening where you said something along the lines like, I wanted to take you here, because it really gives off the air that you're inviting someone into a home, which
Mhm.
you were like going to describe, which I really liked.
Thank you.
I was muted, sorry. I liked how you tied the cooking back to her childhood. Like the reason she's so obsessed with food is because she didn't have a lot to eat when she was younger. I really liked how you tied that in.
Thank you.
I really loved that, food as a love language, and then how that harkens back to her family beforehand and how that's impacting family going forward. I thought it was a really interesting play because it is an immigrant story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty powerful if you think about that, that people a generation ago, 2 generations ago, did not have food. And now we're just very fortunate we can just go to the store and get food. A lot changes in that span of a generation or 2.
Well, and definitely, I mean, one of the themes of a lot of really good immigrant writing is the immigrant children's writing is the connection to food. And Diana Abu Jaber writes this book called The Language of Baklava. And in it, it's so amazing. Her dad is Jordanian, but her mother is American. And when they're in America, he keeps trying to grill up, what his favorite Jordanian foods, but he's trying to eat a memory, she says. And it's because our foods are just different than Jordanian food. So he never can quite, remake it in America. And that's just one of, food writing is one of my areas of specialty I was doing when I was an academic. And that book is just beautiful and worth it. All to say, I loved the line, all done with her hands, and then you give a list of the ingredients and pause and kind of linger on cheese in all the best ways, right? I was like,
Mhm.
Geez, I need to go see. You made me want those things myself. And that's exactly, when we talk about the idea that smell is so deeply associated with memory, again, this is the place where you have this physical action with our hands, but likely because this is being told as a memory, as Lauren was saying, this is a great chance to bring in that smell and talk about the ways that you're reminded of the grandmother and the experience and the
Mhm.
sensory overload that comes with all the best food in the world. And I remember a holiday where a family member was on one of those, way back then, like kind of, it wasn't called a keto diet back then. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a protein heavy diet. And that person did not eat my grandmother's holiday meal. And I was like, well, what is that? One
Oh,
meal?
hell no.
Yeah. Like had canned chicken or something instead. And I was like, that's a eating disorder at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah, was he maybe on Atkins?
I think that's probably
Oh,
it.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was on that for a while. It was not great.
No. And I just thought, gosh, grandma made us a holiday meal. So anyway, really nicely
Thanks,
done.
everybody.
And,
Mhm.
there's
I like
so
sharing my Italianness, so thanks.
yeah, and so there's really a lot for you to be considering for material in that, Gina. You write that with a lot of like really personal connection. So keep in mind that the things that are bringing out rich writing in you are great things to either add into your fiction as details. Like a lot of what's autobiographical for us is great to put into fiction because we feel it so closely. So it's just something
Yeah. That's the road I'm kind of going towards because fiction's
Good.
easier. Well, not easier, but less, I don't know. It's just different. I won't get into my thoughts on that right now. Go ahead.
We can talk about that another time since I'm finishing my
Yes.
memoir, right? Okay, so who'd like to go next?
I guess you go ahead.
Okay, so Laurel, you're muted for now, but
All right.
Lauren.
Here you go. Do you mean meeting you is fate? Cameron's statement regarding dread and fear now shine in an all too real light. We've killed the gods that control the elements ages ago. She retorts, we navigate our own paths. That's wishful thinking, Cameron, the Odysseus of the nickel slot snorts. He slaps the machine with brotherly affection. We're all programmed to win and lose, just like these babies are. This machine makes, whether this machine makes me broke or a millionaire has already been decided by a computer.
Can you read the line about the nipples again?
Oh, the nickel slots, nickel.
That's great.
I was like, oh my God, like, does it, pierce their nipples?
That's a good prompt for the improv. That's a good word to throw at people.
Nipple? Yeah, I try to be careful. Okay, great. Now that I know what it is, what do y'all think?
I loved we're all programmed to win or lose, and that basically our destiny or our life is determined by a computer. I don't know if I wrote it down exactly, but good God, that's awesome because you can look at that a couple different ways. And just even like in our current society, our life is determined by a computer, like just everything we do, banking, working, getting gas, your debit card, if it's how we're connected. So I thought that really spoke to me, just to be programmed to win or lose, but you're just kind of at the fate of, like the universe. And, kind of like the computer, sometimes if the computer works, that's great. It's a good day. And if it doesn't, it's like, you're just like the universe. Like sometimes there'll be bad weather and you got to drive in it. And that's not like a great day, but other days it's nice and sunny. So I think that, being programmed to win or lose, but then I thought of like fate in there. That's kind of what it brought to me. And I know that might be a little abstract, but I really liked that.
Well,
It
thank
made
you.
my brain think in a lot of different directions, which I love.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I sort of went to that, it was a comparison between life and the sort of slot machine. And just that, it does seem random a lot of times, but also that it's like pre-programmed as well. And there's that sort of like dichotomy that still like meshes together. And it's really interesting. And also that a lot of those games are rigged as well.
Right.
My favorite sentence was the last one, because I have this just real distrust towards automation. So it really spoke to me.
Thank you.
I would add in that one, it's tough to write in dialogue in these fast things, so well done doing that. And then the things I was picking, I take notes, and so I was probably missing a little bit, but I think he said that we killed the gods of this illness long ago. Did you say something close to that?
Oh, the gods that control the elements.
Oh, elements. Because then when I heard illness, I was like, oh, are we in a dystopia? Is this like post-apocalyptic? So I was listening for clues like that, but I really thought the wording, when I think it's a female character, because Cameron's the other speaker, she says, I think we navigate our own past, something like that. As somebody, I've deeply studied memory. That's before food writing, it was memory, and it still is memory. And so I love that idea that she thinks we can not only like sort of shape how we arrived in our present moment, but then she believes in the possibilities of our future in a way that Cameron clearly does not. And I think that's fantastic because, I mean, ultimately, unless we're in a post-apocalyptic future, we're not being controlled by a computer, even though Cameron's implying that. So you're setting up a lot of really good tension there between his worldview and her worldview. And it started off with, so you think fate brought us together. And then they're having like a Nietzschean fate and free will conversation, right? Which is
Right.
pretty complex. Yeah. So
Thank you.
I think you're onto something there for sure.
Thank you.
All right. And I think, Kai, we still have you to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is pretty dark, just so you know.
Okay.
I brought you here because it was the only way you would agree to talk to me. Really talk, not just flash your restraining order copy and then threaten to call the cops again. That was just rude, Charlie. I shifted in my seat, my wrists rubbed raw on the restraints and my mouth dry from the just removed gag. I stared up at him with an odd mix of terror and boredom, only a fragile sort of stubbornness keeping me going, keeping me from breaking down in tears I knew he wanted to see. Forgive me for my rudeness, but I'd argue that this takes the cake. I lifted my wrists as high as I could, an eyebrow raised. I didn't want to do that. You know that, she pouted. Could have fooled me.
All right, everybody.
I'll start. So the wrists rubbed raw, and I think after that it was looking up in terror and boredom. Was that the line? So that was interesting to me because I would never associate being bored with if you're terrorized. So I took it as like, oh, kind of like I'm freaking out, but this has kind of happened before, maybe not this intensely. So here we go again. But what's the heck with the wrists and everything? So yeah, that was interesting because that you normally don't hear terror and boredom in the same sentence, and I like that because it just made you think a little differently, like what's really going on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that line stuck out for me too, and it's kind of like a psychopathic Emily Post type of thing where there's like this moment of terror, but it's kind of like they're discussing what's polite behavior and what's good manners when you're visiting someone's home and don't be rude. And I thought that was kind of like had like a dark humor element to it.
Thank you.
My favorite line was about the restraining order. Like, I had to do this, otherwise you get another one. I think that just said so much about whoever this is that's doing this.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
was going to ask exactly, Jonathan, you know, how many of us knew that in the next line she was going to be bound to a chair? Because I felt like, oh, here we go. He
Mhm.
captured her. So that was really, really great. I love the way you were able to bring fragile stubbornness into that as well. At the
Thank you.
end, it would have been nice for me to be reading because I sort of lost track of who was talking, and I think your technique was perfect. I don't think you needed dialogue tags. I just needed the visual to know, you know. I mean,
Yeah, I get that.
it would have been easy to keep track of if I'd been seeing it. And I got the impression maybe she was just a little bit off her rocker too, if I'm right, like looking back at him. And then the one thing I would say that I love, because I love the terror and boredom too, and it's actually a really common representation of when soldiers go to war. So in the larger work, you know, we read the things they carried. I think we read how, no, maybe it's the things they carried. Yeah. In English 529, well, the larger book called that by Tim O'Brien, he talks about basically how war is hours and hours of boredom interspersed with tiny moments of terror. And that seems exactly like they're in battle with each other. So I felt like that,
Yeah.
whether consciously or not, you were engaging in a conversation that includes conflict like that.
Yeah, I was trying to go for like the extended like PTSD of, you know, when you're afraid for so long, it just becomes boring.
Right. Like she's learned when she needs to spike her terror. This moment isn't it. He's in the middle of chewing her out. Pretty soon he's going to terrify her and she knows it, but this is not it.
Yeah, and actually the I was trying to make it where the person on the chair is the man, and the person who has her or has him is the woman.
That's fantastic. And that makes more sense to me because of the nature of the chastisement. Yeah, I love that. That turns us right on our heads. You know, we make assumptions about who's going to be controlled in those situations. And I love it when we make the stereotype get turned on its head. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I feel like you all got a lot of really exciting material out of today. I hope you agree. The next time that I have scheduled to do this is in 2 more weeks, and I have very traditional prompts prepared for that time. So I don't have improv writing in there. If you think that I should, just let me know and we could do it again. But it's really easy to do for yourself, and these other prompts send you in another direction. And typically what'll happen in the next time, Gina gets to do whatever she wants because she's outside of the class. But for you all, you're going to be in the middle of writing your own work. And I think we're in character development as the emphasis for that one. So what I do is just try to send you off in directions with your character that you're not expecting. And those may or may not show up in your writing, but what it does is help give you some depth to what you're writing. And it may change what you decide to have on the page and it may not. But that's where we're headed for 2 weeks from now. Do y'all have any questions or comments or, you know?
I just want to say, I hope you guys are enjoying the class because it's a fun class. That Dr. Max, that was a really, I mean, the majority of my classes here have been really, really wonderful. Some are a little, you know, we all have some that are better than others, but it's just such a great class because it just gives you, I remember each week, just, you know, with the sensory detail or then cutting down the words or, you know, developing my character or the setting. And it's just, because fiction is very hard for me. Fiction is just, it's kind of a hard thing for me, which is why it usually always comes from real life stuff. But it's just such a fun class. So I hope you guys are really enjoying it. And it's cool, especially the cutting and down of the words. So you're going to, I'd be interested to see how you feel about that in a couple weeks because it's so helpful and you don't realize it at first it's like, oh my God, I have to cut down words. But then it's like, oh, I have to cut down words. So yeah, and just thank you for inviting me, Dr. Max. I'm very excited to meet the three of you. It was very cool to listen to your writing, and I just love it. I love just getting exposed to new people and different ideas. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you.
And I think all of you are there, but I need the Slack channel this term, just because Gina, CD, Jess, Jennifer, and the woman that wasn't in my class but has joined you from the other class, they're the only people I know who have continued a community. And so I thought, well, what if I created a space to help you all keep a community that happens beyond just this class and could happen beyond SNHU? So I did make that Slack channel. That's all my intention for it. And I'm trying to treat it the way that my cohort has their Slack channel. Like, we have a Slack channel where we talk about submissions, or we talk a lot about chaotic energy. Actually, that's probably our most active channel. But I just wanted to make a space where y'all could sympathize with each other or do works in progress. And I've put up a couple of my work in progress things to try to encourage y'all to do yours. And so far it's not sticking, but we'll see. And maybe the space won't be useful, but I hope it will be. And if it's not, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be robust, but I'm trying right now. I'm the only person really talking in it. So I really want to encourage y'all to, if you see things like opportunities for contests, or you want to put up a paragraph to, you know, ask how it's going. You all can see that Chris is a really careful reader. She always comments on my paragraphs and she has great suggestions. So, you know, I encourage you to take advantage of it if you can. And if it's not working for you, if that's not the format that works for you, that's fine. Well, you know, Lauren asked me about Bennington, and it's 10 weeks, 4 terms, 5 if you're doing dual genre. But that connection that we made by going there together and, you know, spending our evenings in college dorms as, like, you know, a 48-year-old or whatever I was, 50-year-old, that really made a tight bond for us. And that's been the most important thing in my writing going forward from there, is still being connected with these writers. And that's all I'm trying to create in the Slack channel. So it doesn't work. I understand. It's just been so amazing with my own cohort that I'm trying to help you have the same thing.
I appreciate that. I forgot completely about it, but I will get on there.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about. I know. I have notifications because of my other group, and so I end up seeing it more.
Yeah, part of the reason I decided to go into graduate work is to try to seek out communities for writing instead of just getting a degree. So I really like the potential of this. For me, it's just a question of time. You know, like, we all have trouble in the time. So that's my only hurdle, but I'm very receptive to this idea.
Awesome. Yeah, and I do understand time. Boy, do I ever. I am about to spend the rest of the day working on your grading. So I do understand. Jonathan, do you have anything? I feel like I've squished you out.
No, yeah, I'm just not much of a talker, but I'm really glad that I was able to make it here this evening.
Me too.
Time
Yes.
does get away from you. I almost forgot that it's Saturday, because yesterday was Tuesday.
Yeah, of course, right?
Feel that.
And tomorrow's going to be Friday, and it's going to be awful. Well, thank you all so much for coming. We'll see you in Slack during the 2 weeks in between, and I'm doing my best to try to get your milestone work back to you by this afternoon. Wish me luck. I have something like 30 left to grade, and I'm sorry.
Oof.
Sorry, I'm
Good
trying.
luck.
No, it's fine.
Oh,
It's so much fun. You guys are so imaginative. Like, I mean, at least I'm having a good time, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. It's definitely fun. And I'll get them to you as soon as I can. Thank you for coming. I'll end the meeting, but we'll see you soon.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
everybody. It was
Oh,
great to see
and
you.
nice to meet you too. By the way, Dr. Fraser, my medieval lit professor is Dr. Justice.
Justice?
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know that person. Oh, well.
Okay.
Because the one I know is just incredible. So I'm sure that person's fine.
Awesome.
I've just never been a team lead for him. So, you know, I don't know if he or she is what they're like, but the one I know
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the class, but I'm just like really into medieval lit, so.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, everybody, have a great
Bye.
couple of weeks. See you
Take care.
soon.
You too. Bye.
Bye.